Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to whip up some homemade pretzels. We're gonna make got our pot roast baking, but we're gonna finish up our pot roast, make some mashed potatoes, caramelized carrots and onions, and then of course we'll bake up our pretzels. So let's start by getting our potatoes peeled and in our pot so that we can get our mashed potatoes going. I actually think I'm only gonna use 3 of these because these are massive potatoes. And we'll dice them up, get them going, boiling, so we can have some lovely mashed potatoes. And then we'll start shaping up our pretzels and get those boiled off and in the oven to bake up. We'll take our pot roast out, and then we're gonna our pork roast, and then we'll wrap it in aluminum foil to kind of let it soak in its juices. And then we'll use the drippings to make a lovely gravy. So lots of good things happening. But I know, I was like, I got a picnic roast or like a butt roast, a pork butt roast. And I was just deciding so much time I do like in my Instapot, and then I do kind of like a pulled pork, either carnitas or barbecue sandwich. And I was like, I want to do something different today. So I seasoned up my pork roast. Essentially, I patted it dry, then I rubbed it down with olive oil. And then I made a seasoning blend using onion powder, garlic, salt, paprika, thyme, and black pepper. And good amount of each one, like a tablespoon of each one. And then I rubbed that all over my pork roast. And then I put it in my oven about 3.5 hours ago at 315 degrees. And I've baked it, or I'm roasting it with the fat side up, so that fat will naturally drip down into the roast and just make it tender and delicious in there. So pretty delicious. A little bit different. I feel like I always do like a chuck roast in like a pot roast dish, but this is different. Okay, we've got our potatoes nice and peeled up. We're using russets because russets make the best mashed potatoes. So they are lighter and fluffier. So they're not as starchy and sticky. So they give you a really light and fluffy mashed potato. Now, the only thing is when you're boiling them off, you just have to be careful not to over boil them because they will disintegrate away. But I think that's what makes them so nice and light and fluffy. So we're going to chop up our potatoes and roughly get them all around the same size so they cook up at about the same time. And then we'll drop them in our water. And after they're done boiling, we will reserve a little bit of the starchy water to help with our gravy, because the drippings that we'll have in our pan won't have enough like flavor base to it, like liquid base. It'll have a good fat content, which will be great for making the roux, but we'll need a little bit of more of a liquid base to make our gravy. And it will have all those great spices in it that we seasoned up our roast with. And then we'll start shaping up our pretzels as well, boil them off, and bake them up in the oven. And then it'll be dinner time. Oh, don't forget, we're going to make our carrots and caramelized carrots and onions. Kind of one of my favorite little just side dishes. Pairs really well with pork because the sweetness of it kind of just accompanies it really well. Kind of like a spiced apple too. Okay, let's turn my water up nice and high here. We're going to start boiling off our potatoes. And then here.
You have a question. Have you ever thought about having chickens?
We eat a lot of chicken. Doing a roast chicken?
No, having chickens.
Oh, having chickens. I thought you were like eating chicken. I was like, oh, you eat a lot of chicken. I would love to have chickens. I've actually thought about it a lot. I'm just not sure if our HOA allows it. And I don't know if I do have cats. We have like 3 cats and then 2 dogs. We have like a lot of animals already. So I don't know how the cats and the dogs would do if chickens. And I'm sure they would all get along. At least the dogs would. I don't know about the cats.
I want goats.
I would love goats too. they eat everything. So it's kind of like the, gosh, my mom growing up always said she wanted a goat so that she wouldn't have to, mow the lawn. It's not really practical. We're going to add in about a fourth a cup of baking soda into our water. We're going to boil our pretzels off in a baking soda mixture. So I do not use lye. I use baking soda as it because lye is very caustic, don't want to chemically burn my hands. So baking soda is what it is. I've got my dough here. This is just my basic yeast pretzel dough. Absolutely love. I prepped it up about an hour and a half ago. And so it's kind of been proofing. We're going to divide this up and I'm going to figure out how many pretzels I'm going to make. I think I might make 12 pretzels for this. So we're going to cut it and then I'll do my shape. Now I'm going to tell you, I don't follow a traditional pretzel shape because that takes a lot longer. I've got this little roll and twist movement going on that gives me this really lovely pretzel roll. Much easier to roll up quickly than an actual pretzel. So we modified. I remember the first time I made pretzels, it was like, took me like 2 hours. It took so long. And now I've gotten it to like an art. So I've divided up my dough and got my water nice thing. What we're going to do is we're going to start by rolling it out nice and long. And this is essentially giving you that press down on the dough that lets out those kind of gases from the first rise. And then I kind of do okay, now for some reason I have completely forgotten. There we go. I was like, why am I not remembering my twist? My kind of twirl and twist for it. So when you think about it too much, it completely goes away. And I was like, wait a second, what am I doing here? Here we go. Got it back. Remembered it now. And all I do is I roll it out and then I do my little swirly thing. And it gives you nothing like a pretzel shape, but it gives you those rolls and like curves in there. And it just is perfect.
Is that a technical term? Twisty thing?
Yeah. So you just do your little twisty and pull it through to tuck it in. So it has your little tucks and everything. And I find that it holds together really well when we boil it off. And it just is a lot faster than doing it the traditional way, where you can really whip these guys out pretty quick. So it's more like a pretzel knot on here. And once we get these there, we're going to actually take our roast out of the oven since it's at 315 because it needs to kind of, you wrap it up in aluminum foil and then you let it sit for, 20 to 30 minutes. After you take it out, it kind of traps in all the juices and makes it nice and tender and delicious. So we'll do that. And then we're going to turn our oven up to 450 because these bake for 8 minutes at 450 after you boil them off, which is pretty quick. So we've got our first 6 done. You see how quick you can get these? Now, if you do want to do the traditional way, you got to roll your little pretzel thing out a little bit longer. And then you kind of twist it. And then you do a little tuck under. And it gives you your traditional pretzel shape. But I find my ways easier and the same result at the very end. It all tastes good. You cover it with butter and salt and it's a win. Now this is a really easy dough to make. So you start off with 1.5 cups of warm water and then you add in a tablespoon of yeast, 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, and then you let your yeast bloom in the brown sugar water. And after it's bloomed, like nice and foamy, then you are going to add in 4 cups of bread flour, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 4 tablespoons of melted butter. Knead all of those up in a dough, then put it in a nice warm spot to rise for about, an hour to an hour and a half. And then it's time to shape up, boil off, and bake. Okay. See? Nice and easy. And these don't need a second like rise. You just have that one rise. When you boil them, they actually puff up pretty a little bit when you boil them off, and then they bake up and they give again another good puff. And twist and pull. Okay. Before we boil these guys off, we're gonna go grab our roast out of the oven so that it can start to sit it, and then we'll start boiling these off, and then we'll wrap it up in aluminum foil. But this is it's a pork butt roast, and it has a bone in, and it's been roasting at 350. So I'm going to first bring my oven to 450 so that I'll be ready for my pretzels here. We're going to take this guy out. So looking gorgeous. So you see how it's got a nice little fat strip on top. When you roast it with the fat strip up so that when that fat renders down, it goes into the meat and makes it nice and tender and delicious. You can see our spices on here. We have thyme, garlic salt, black pepper, paprika, onion powder, and you just kind of, after you rub it with a little bit of olive oil, you rub that all the way around, and then you just roast it at 315 for about 3.5 hours. And we'll wrap it up in just a second, but we'll let it sit there. Let's get our first set of pretzels dropping in to boil off here. I'm going to grab a slotted spoon. Just makes it a little bit easier to pull them out. And then I just pop them in, and they're going to boil for 30 seconds on each side. So we'll kind of pop them in, and then I just poke them and they flip them over. So we're boiling them in our baking soda water, which is going to help give that pretzel that chewy shell. So these are not crunchy or hard pretzels. These are like the American soft pretzel, the Pretzel Time, Annie Ann's, all like those deliciousness. So just 30 seconds on each side, and then you're just going to give it a little poke to flip it over. Here. And this is a crucial step. You can't just bake it off. If you bake it off, you just have rolls. You don't have pretzels. So you got to make sure you do the boil on it. The longer you boil it, you can boil it up to a minute, and then it gives you a little bit thicker of a pretzel skin to it. So I like 30 seconds on each side, but you don't have to be exact. You can have a little bit of wiggle room with it. And you can see when I pull it out how much bigger it is than the unboiled ones. Here. We'll drop these guys in. I think I can actually get a little bit more than 3 in here. So we'll drop those, give them a little poke over. Again, keep it nice and hot and boiling in our baking soda. I have our pot filled up, about 1/4 of a cup of baking soda in here. Don't go more than that, or you'll get a baking soda flavor on your bagels, but you just need enough to give you this kind of lovely little chewy base for them. And then we're going to give them a little poke over. And so if you have enough water in them, if you just tap it, essentially dunks it, and then it flips over. So you want to have enough water in there that they can completely do a flip. And then we'll boil them off. And then we will brush them with an egg wash, and that's going to give them this nice shiny brown coloring on them. And then after we bake them off is when I rub butter and salt over them. And you have to use pretzel salt. You can't use regular salt. Pretzel salt is, salt that has been like flaked and dehydrated, so it's not quite as salty in the concentrate, and it's softer to kind of eat. these guys. And I'm using my big baking sheet, my sheet and a half, because I like these to bake just on the top layer of my oven. It gives them the best kind of bake. Let's put these last ones in. And then I'm going to grab an egg out of my fridge, and we will whip this egg with about a tablespoon of water. So not a whole lot, but just enough to liquefy it just a little bit.
And how long on each side?
About 30 seconds on each side, give or take. You don't have to be precise to it. I used to, when I first started doing it, I used to count out the 30 seconds. I even did the timer on it. And then I realized that wasn't necessary. Just getting in the ballpark is well enough. Here, give them a good flip over now. And then I'm going to crack my egg into our little water base here. So I put about a tablespoon of water in here with one egg. I'm going to pop our yolk, and we'll give this a good whisk up. And then we'll brush this over each pretzel roll, or since pretzel, and that way it will get that nice brownish shine. Otherwise, it will have a very blonde bake. So it doesn't really add any flavor, but it gives you that more brownish color to your pretzel. Okay. So here's my beautiful kind of traditional one. And then the rest are my little crazy rolls. Here. Beautiful. So now that we are done with this water, I'm going to go take it over here. And we're now going to brush our egg wash over each kind of pretzel here. And just kind of make sure you coat it up, because if you miss a spot, you're not going to get that nice brown shine to it. So it's just kind of like on a brioche bread or on our challah when we make it. This egg wash gives it a lovely shine.
You need to make that again.
I know, my quick challah. I have so many breads everybody loves that it's always just like, I can't make them all. Soon I'll be making my saffron bread for Santa Lucia, and that is such a hit. I actually make so much of it because I make 2 loaves for my best friend because it's her favorite bread. And then it's also Torrin's favorite as well. And so I used to, traditionally you'd pass them out to, people. So when I was at work, I used to have my kids pass them out to like all the other teachers and whatnot. But now my Evie will bring them to school for her teachers and whatnot. And she always dresses up for Santa Lucia at school as well.
I have a question. What yeast do you use for your pretzel dip?
This is just like Fleischmann's active dry yeast. And they're the ones, you keep in the refrigerator. You can also use like the packets in there, but I just find the little jar works the best. Okay, we're not going to pop these in the oven yet. We'll do that in just a few.
A couple questions. What is Santa Lucia, and will you put the recipe for the saffron buns up?
Santa Lucia is kind of like a winter solstice holiday. It's essentially, it's celebrated on December 13th, and it's pretty much signifies that the days are going to start getting longer. The sun is going to shine more. So the eldest daughter wears a crown with the lights on it, and then you have the saffron buns, and that saffron. Oh, yep, I have a little mouse Santa Lucia right here. And she's actually holding a little light thing that kind of signifies it, and you have candles on the top. But the saffron buns are yellow, signifying light, and it just means that the cold winter is coming, to an end. Days are getting longer and whatnot. And then it's kind of you pay your respects to your elder. You bring them coffee and, saffron buns and little treats. Let's get this guy into, I'm going to see how I can maneuver him off without him falling. We're going to move this guy over here. I'm going to slide my spatula right underneath because we're going to use this pot to make our roux for our gravy with those kind of drippings. And you're going to wrap it up in this aluminum foil right here. And that's going to help trap in the moisture and keep it nice and hot until we're ready to eat it up. You always need to let your roast sit for 20 to 30 minutes before you eat it. That's just simply so that when you cut it up, the juices don't fall out everywhere. It keeps it nice and tender and moist and delicious. So it's nice and hot in here. I'm going to keep it. We're going to let it work there, and then we'll use our drippings in a little bit. Let me check on my potatoes here. I'll know when my potatoes are ready is you're just going to fish out a really big potato, and if your fork can go through it easily, then you know it's ready. So we're pretty good, about ready to drain these. Let's go get our saffron buns, our homemade pretzels in the oven. I shape my saffron buns not exactly like this, but they get a little twist and curl up to it. I do some crazy ones. You can make like this, a goat, and then like a Santa Claus bread with how you twirl it and do weird stuff. I typically just do the simple one and then a multi-braid bread. Okay, we're gonna pop this in the oven at 450, and then I'm gonna set my timer for 8 minutes. It bakes up and puffs up and gets nice and lovely golden brown. While we're doing that, let's get our carrots kind of prepped and ready. We'll strain our mashed potatoes here in just a second. Let me get a little ladle of water of this kind of starchy broth or starchy potato water that we'll use kind of to add with a little bit of beef bouillon to make our gravy. And this will just help thicken up our gravy a little bit. And you can always use just like plain water as well, but I like this. I'm going to turn this one off, and then I'm just going to strain it so that our potatoes can't cook anymore. And then I'll put a stick of butter in there to melt, and then we'll whip them up in a little bit. But you don't want to keep cooking your potatoes, especially since these are russet, because they will just disintegrate. If you cook them long enough, they'll completely disappear and you'll just have starchy, sticky water. So I'm going to put this right here with a stick of butter in here. Maybe not a full stick because we didn't use all of our potatoes. So 3/4 of a stick of butter in here. Just push it down. We're not going to whip it until it completely melts in there, because if you whip it too soon or when it's cold, it doesn't give you a fluffy mashed potato. So you want it to be melted. We're going to add a little bit of cream here, and I'll salt it and whatnot in a little bit. But let's get our onion sauteing, and then we'll get our carrots prepped up for our caramelized carrots and onions. That we'll have as another little kind of side dish with tonight's dinner. And I feel like the caramelized carrots and onions play really well because with pork, I feel like you can lean into some of those sweeter vegetables or side dishes. Like a roasted acorn squash would be lovely. Sweet potato mash, all would be great with this. Spiced apples, spiced pears. I'm doing nice, long, and skinny onions, like strings, so that they kind of match the carrots. I'm going to turn on my pan here. We're going to start at a 6. I'm going to add about, a tablespoon of olive oil. and we'll start cooking off. I will add a smidge of butter to this when I add in my brown sugar later to kind of make a slightly sweet glaze. I don't make it too sweet. I like it just a little bit sweet, but with a little hint of garlic salt as well. So let those start. And while those are starting, I'm going to move this over here. Let me grab my oven mitts. I don't want to accidentally grab this and burn myself, which I have done plenty of times, thinking, oh, it's not hot anymore. It's still hot. And then let's get our carrots here peeled up, and then we're going to do, we'll kind of quarter them and make them into long kind of little strips. You can also, if you don't want to peel and cook things, they make in the carrot section, they're called microwavable carrots. So they're fresh carrots, but they're really small and like been shaved down. And those work really well where you can just kind of throw in the bag of it. Baby carrots, you still kind of have to have because they're a bit too thick. But the little microwavable ones, and I'd say they're not pre-cooked, they're fresh carrots. They're just really small carrots. And those work really well as well. Give you also kind of the cute little baby carrot look to it. You got a lot of, sometimes you get, when you get your carrots, sometimes you get these like really skinny carrots. And I'm always like, I got to do like twice the work to prep these. Always, if you're going to use full carrots, always peel off the outside. That outside is really dry, has more of an earthy texture and flavor to it. And so it's just not as good. So always give it a good peel. You're not really wasting any. You're just getting rid of the not so great parts. Okay. Let me grab, oh, my knife is right here, but let me grab my tongs. Give these just a little toss in that olive oil. And we'll let them start to kind of cook up here. And then I'm going to prep my carrots here. So we're going to take off the ends of all of them. This is one where if you can get the rainbow carrots, they make a really pretty pop. The purple ones will turn your onions a little bit purple as well, but they always give a really fun little pop of color to it. Okay. And now I'm going to kind of quarter my thicker ones to where we have just kind of nice little carrot, kind of almost like carrot sticks. But the kind of the thinner you cut them, the faster they will cook up and, you know, pick up their flavor. You don't want to leave them too thick or they don't get all that glaze on them. And then once our onions have a nice kind of caramelization on it, the beginning on it, we'll throw in our carrots. Don't throw in your carrots too premature because then you won't get that good caramelization on it. Once we get our carrots prepped up here, we're going to make kind of a roux base for our gravy that we'll have with our mashed potatoes, and you can put it over the roast. We're going to use the drippings from our pork roast to add a lot of great flavors. Again, when we seasoned up our pork roast, we used paprika, onion powder, garlic, salt, thyme, and pepper. So those will all add wonderful flavors to the gravy as well. And last guy. Okay, let's give our carrots a nice little toss. We're starting to get a nice little browning edge on them. So I'm going to toss in my carrots here. And we won't add in our brown sugar until the carrots have kind of tenderized up, because you don't want that brown sugar to cook so long that it turns into like a candy. So I'm just coating them all up. And then to kind of cook them a little bit faster, I'm going to put my lid on them, which will kind of steam cook it, but it just traps in that heat and allows it to cook just a smidge faster. Okay, let's take a look at our kind of drippings here. I'm just going to kind of scrape it around first, kind of deglaze our pan, because I want all of these great flavors in there, but I don't need quite as much oil in there. So I'm going to take a little bit of it out, and I want to take some off. But our pretzels are beeping, so let's head over there. And then we'll get our gravy going. We'll whip up our mashed potatoes, and we'll kind of be doing the finishing touches for everything here. So here is our lovely, beautiful things. I'm going to rotate them, and then I'm going to give them just 1 more minute to cook. That way our backside gets this nice little brown topping on it, or coloring for it. So just 1 minute, and then we'll pull those out. You always want to make sure you rotate it. Like my back of my oven always cooks super fast, or like super dark on like hot on one side, and I want that nice even brown. So I'm going to take a little bit of this oil out because we don't want it all in it. If you leave it in for your gravy, you are going to have really greasy and a gravy that separates as well. So I'm going to take out a couple ladles of the grease, and these are just the fat drippings. But I want to leave all of the kind of the seasoned bits in here as much as possible. There we go. That should be good. Let me grab a whisk here, and I'm going to bring this over here, and I'm going to grab my flour because we'll need that. And then here, I'll bring our pretzels right over here for this. Now that we've had that second little time to cook up. Beautiful. And now we've got this perfect, evenly browned pretzels here. Look how gorgeous they look. We're going to let them cool for just a second here. And then we'll rub them over with some room temperature butter and then sprinkle them with some salt. But you want to let them sit for just a second, and then we'll kind of coat them while they're still warm. Let's add in, I've got my beef bouillon right here. We're going to add in a scoop into our starchy hot potato water. And that will kind of let it dissolve. It will give it its nice flavor, and we'll use this in to make our roux base for our gravy. I'm going to mix in my flour here with our meat drippings, which has our good fat part, so we don't need to add in butter. I'm going to add in about, I want to say like a tablespoon. We'll mix it and see how that looks. I'm going to turn on my little pan here to about a 4, so nice and low. And we're going to just kind of whisk it together here. And then just make sure you kind of scrape those pans as we go. I think I'm going to add a smidge more. So I've got about a tablespoon and a half. And there we go. You want enough to make a paste, but you don't want your paste to be super oily either. So here's those lovely meat drippings from our pork roast. And once our pan starts to heat up here, just a second, give your roux like a minute or two to kind of toast up. I'm going to whip up my mashed potatoes now while we wait. And the nice thing, so I cook them in my little metal pan. The nice thing about doing them in your pan, you can whip them up in there. Now, this is an all-metal pan, so you don't have to worry about ruining it. If you are using a non-stick pan, do not whip your mashed potatoes in there, or you will ruin your pan.
Oh, Laura, since you get.
Well, thank you, Laura. We appreciate that. So in here, we added our 6 tablespoons of butter and about a 1/4 cup of cream. We're going to start whipping them up. There. And then we'll add in some salt, and I'll see if we need more cream. You never know quite how much cream you're going to need because you don't know exactly how starchy those potatoes are. And the starchier they are, the more cream you're going to need to get that light fluff. And if you ever have problems with having lumpy potatoes, it means you didn't boil them all the way through. And so those lumps are parts of the potatoes that didn't get cooked all the way. So they're things. We're going to add in a couple pinches of salt here. We'll let that sit for just a second and then we'll whip it up again. We're going to add in our bouillon here.
Heather, since you get.
Thank you, Heather. We appreciate that. And now I'm going to slowly add in a little bit of our kind of bouillon, our starchy potato water with it. And you see how it's already making this kind of nice creamy base to it. Just add little by little until you get the right consistency. And this will have all of this wonderful flavors from our meat. Like it has these drippings from the bottom of our pan, which is why we're doing it in our roasting pan. Keep your burner on nice and low. We'll let it simmer here. I'm going to give our carrots and onions a little stir. Beautiful. You can see my carrots are already starting to get that nice kind of caramelization and bringing it up. I'm going to add a little bit of butter now in here to let it kind of melt up, and then we'll add our brown sugar and our little bit of our garlic salt.
Mary, since you get.
Mary, thank you very much. We appreciate that a lot.
Do you have a question? Do you do the same thing if you want a chicken gravy or turkey gravy?
Yes, you can use this kind of base thing for a chicken or a turkey. A roux is just a great start. It's kind of your thickener to your gravy, and then just slowly add it in. When I am roasting my turkey, we roast it in a bag, and then you have all the natural juices that come out. You pour those juices in a container like a little Pyrex cup or whatnot, and you'll pour that back in after you made your roux with flour and butter to make your gravy. And then just to give your gravy a little extra pop of color, let's see if I have it out here. It's called Kitchen Bouquet, but it's a browning seasoning. Oh, here it is. I have some right here. I was going to put a little drop in it. It has slight little fizzing, but it will give you your really lovely brown color to your gravy. So when you're doing a chicken or a turkey, as you can see, so I have just a little bit here, but you mix it in and it's going to give you this lovely brown color to it. It's made from roasted veggies, so it gives you a great flavor profile as well. There. Let that kind of simmer here. My butter is just about melted. We put our lid on for just a second, then we're going to add in a little bit of brown sugar and garlic salt, and those will be done. Let's rub our butter over our pretzels here so we can sprinkle with salt now that they've kind of cooled off just a smidge.
What was the name of that seasoning again?
So it's called Kitchen Bouquet, and it's in like the condiment aisle on there, but I love this. Funny story about Kitchen Bouquet. My mom sent my brother out with a shopping list to get stuff, and on the list she had put Kitchen Bouquet. And unless you know what Kitchen Bouquet is, you don't think of a browning seasoning. So my brother got home from the grocery store and he gave my mom a bouquet of flowers because she's like, oh, you must mean a bouquet of flowers for the kitchen. And my mom was like, oh, that's so sweet of you getting me flowers and all of that. And then as she's going to make her gravy, she was like, oh, where's the kitchen bouquet? And my brother was like, right there on the counter on there. And it was just kind of a funny joke because unless you know what it is, you'll think it's flowers or something, but it adds, it's just a bunch of roasted veggies that have been kind of pureed into a sauce, but it adds just that lovely kind of amber brown color to your gravy. Okay, now we've got them all buttered and we're going to sprinkle them with our pretzel salt. So again, you want to use actual pretzel salt instead of like real salt or kosher salt because this is not as salty as a regular one. I'm going to do 2 more and then I'm going to do 4 with cinnamon sugar because my kids love a sweet pretzel as well. So you just sprinkle some cinnamon sugar over it. And there you kind of have a dessert pretzel, which they love. But they're just so delicious and so easy to make. Okay, I'm gonna add my last little bit here. Our gravy is pretty much made up. I'm gonna give it a quick taste. And it's got all this great kind of seasonings from our roast. Delicious. I don't even think we need, let's add a bit of cream to make it nice and smooth. This will lighten up the color, but it's a great addition to a lot of gravies. You don't have to do it, but I think it mellows it out. There we go. So here is our beautiful gravy. Let's get our carrots and our onions. You can see we've got this nice kind of caramelization going, and nice the onions are nice and brown from it. So we're going to add in our brown sugar. Remember, we added in about a tablespoon of butter in here. And we don't need a whole lot of brown sugar. I do about like a tablespoon or so. And then we're going to sprinkle a little bit of garlic salt. And then you just let it cook for about a minute, and then it should be ready. We'll whip up our potatoes one last time, and then we'll be ready to kind of cut up our roast. So let's give this a nice little toss. And that brown sugar mixed with the butter is going to just make a nice kind of sticky glaze that is going to cling to the carrots and enhance their sweetness, from the caramelized onions and the carrots. But then that little bit of garlic salt gives you a bit of savory as well. Okay, turn our gravy off because that's ready. Let's do our last whip of our mashed potatoes. There we go. Beautiful. So they're nice and fluffy. Perfect. And the nice thing about keeping them in our pan is they stay nice and hot as well. Okay, let's get our roast out and going. I'm going to slide this over here, and I'm going to change my cutting board to one that has a little edge on it so that if there's any drippings, it will fall into the drippings or into the little crack. I'm going to turn off my carrots. So here is our lovely roast that we wrapped up, and that's to trap in those moisture, keep it nice and things, and it's still very, very hot. You can see the steam coming off of it. So it doesn't, your roast doesn't get cold, but it traps that moisture in and it keeps it really, really juicy. And let me grab. Now I do have a bone in here for it, but you can just see how tender this is. It's just, essentially you can shred it if you want to, but it's just falling apart because it is so tender. So we'll get it there. But you can shred it and have it shredded. You can slice it in there. Just got to work around your bones. Now you can always get a boneless pork roast if you want to, but I kind of like the bone in it. The bone adds a lot of flavor and brings a lot of juiciness to it as well. Okay. Well, guys, we are just about ready to eat here. So I'm going to bring everything over so we can serve up our dinner. Got our caramelized carrots. Let's bring our gravy over here. Get a little ladle for that so that we can drizzle it over our mashed potatoes and our pork roast. And then, of course, we have our pretzels. So let me get a spoon. For dinner tonight, we have our lovely pork roast that we seasoned with our paprika, garlic salt, black pepper, time and roasted in the oven at 315 for about 3.5 hours. We're going to serve it with some creamy mashed potatoes, with just a lovely like butter and cream and salt. Let's make a little dent with our gravy spoon. And then we're going to add in our gravy made from the drippings of our roast. We'll drizzle a little bit over our roast as well. And then we have our caramelized carrots and onions, which will add a nice little sweet and savory kind of effect to our final dish. And then, of course, the star of our show, we have our delicious homemade pretzels, using our yeast dough and rubbed with butter and sprinkled with pretzel salt for just a delicious and simple dinner. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. So we've got our pork butt roast with our pretzels, mashed potatoes, and carrots. And you can watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets. I've got my Dutch ovens, my Hexclad pans, my All-Clads, my big bakeware, knives, cutting boards, all the different things I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.